Hi, my name is Aaron, and I'm going to talk to you a bit today about tarot card games. And this is something which is kind of interesting. If you're from any English-speaking country, there's a good chance that when you hear the word tarot, the only thing you know about it is tarot card reading, so like divination and that kind of thing. Now, I'm kind of a board game nerd primarily, rather than card games. But I've kind of ended up being much more into playing cards online and that kind of thing. And part of the reason for that was I play a lot of board games on a site called Board Game Arena. And one time I happened to see that there was a game there called French Tarot. And I thought, that sounds interesting. I had a look. I thought, I kind of worked out. Obviously, it's got a connection to tarot cards, but I thought I was expecting to see something that looked a bit more like the divination ones. And instead, I saw something that looked like these. So you have things that look mostly just like a normal sort of deck of cards. Didn't really remind me of all of that. And then instead of all of the things like the Lovers and the Empress and all of those things in the Trump series, you had ones that looked like this. That instead of having things like the Devil and the World and the Angel and whatnot, instead you have people frolicking in 19th century France, the bourgeoisie enjoying themselves. And from that, though, I did actually sort of learn a bit more about this, and there's this incredible rich history to tarot card games throughout Europe, and it's a real shame that people in English-speaking countries don't really know about any of that. So hopefully I can explain how some of these games work, and hopefully some of you might be inspired to give it a go. There's a whole family of games that use some form of a tarot deck. So the modern surviving tarot games are mainly played in Italy, Switzerland, France, countries that used to be the Austro-Hungarian Empire, and Denmark. In each country, you usually had various distinctive local variants. So the deck you probably think of when someone says tarot cards is the Rider-Waite deck, which is the famous one that people use for fortune telling, divination, cartomancy. And this was published in 1909, and it's extremely famous. I mean, even if you know nothing about, you're not someone who's into card reading, you know the artwork, you know the concept of it. It's become quite a cultural icon in and of itself. And then so a lot of people ask when they see that there's tarot card games, they say, well, what does that have to do with the card games? And the short answer is not that much nowadays, but the longer answer is that there is a common origin to it. The deck, the Rider-Waite deck that people use for telling your fortune, is largely based on decks like the Tarot de Marseille, which is an older French tarot deck. So if you're familiar with the Rider-Waite deck, you'll know that there's 4 suits, like in a regular playing card deck. The difference being that it uses the older Latin suits of cups, coins, here called pentacles, swords, and sticks, or wands, batons, different depending what you want to call them, that the jacks are called pages, and that there are knights between the jacks and the queens. So these 4 suits are still used as the regular suits in a lot of playing card decks in, for example, Italy and Spain and South America. For example, here I've got some cards from a Bresciani playing card deck, and also you'll notice we've got an ace of coins, an ace of cups, an ace of wands, and an ace of swords. So you can kind of see the connections there. And also you'll notice that a lot of Italian playing cards and a lot of other playing card sets from around, decks from around Europe, will also have the knight, or the horse or the rider, whatever you want to call him. Here's a side-by-side comparison of the Knight of Swords from a Rider-Waite tarot deck and the Knight of Swords, a Cavalier d'Épée, from the Tarot de Marseille. Here we've got the Knight of Swords from a Tarocchino Bolognese deck, which is still used for playing tarot card games in the city of Bologna in Italy. Then the other main difference is that in traditional tarot decks for playing card games with, the pip cards just had the symbols. So instead of a fully illustrated 6 of wands like the Rider-Waite one here, on the right you can see the Tarot de Marseille 6 of clubs, and it's just 6 clubs. Then here for good measure, we've got the 6 of clubs from a Bolognese deck again. So with these 4 suits, you've got all the pip cards from ace through to 10, and then you've got the jack, add the knight, plus the queen and the king. That gives you 14 cards in each suit. 14 times 4 gives you 56 cards. Then there's another 22 on top of that. So these cards are things like the Magician, and the Empress, and Death, the Lovers, the World, and they're labelled with the numbers 1 through 21, with one extra one called the full, which is either some decks labelled 0 or just labelled with no number at all. So for what you call a full tarot deck, you've got 4 regular suits of 14 each for 56, the 22 trumps for a full deck of 78 cards. So these 22 extra cards are probably, I think you could argue, is what give tarot decks and tarot card games most of their unique quality. And I'm going to show you here actually a deck which looks completely different, again quite different to the French one I showed you before. This is a deck from a German game called Seagull, which I realised I forgot before when I showed you the map. And this has another style of things where the 22 at the top, instead of having Death and the Lovers and the Empress and then the World and whatnot, you have got animals. So some of them are fantastic beasts, like the 2 here. You've got some mythical creatures, and then you've got different ones there. And you have also got, as well as all of these trump cards with the animals, you have got a full. And basically any tarot deck, whether it's a playing one or a divination one, will definitely have that very important part of all of the tarot games. Here are the 1, 2, and 3 trumps from the Industrie und Glück deck, which is used for Central European Tarot game. From that same deck, this is the full on the left and the 21 on the right. In some of the playing card decks though, playing tarot decks, some of them, the trumps actually do look like the ones you'd be remembering from the right away. This is some of the trumps from a Tarocco Siciliano deck, so Sicilian tarot. So you see, for example, they've got most of the same motifs in mostly the same order. There's a couple of little differences here and there. So for example, you've got a ship instead of the devil, and some of the numbers don't line up, but you can see how they connect. So once you've worked out that tarot card games exist, one of the first questions people have is, could you play any of these games with a tarot deck like the Rider-Waite one, like the divination one that people are familiar with? And technically, yes, you can. Particularly something like French tarot or Danish tarot that uses a full 78 card deck, you can play them with a Rider-Waite divination deck if you want. The only thing is it doesn't work that well. The reason mostly being that divination decks are designed to be laid out on a table, so you've got lots of visual information, you know, all richly illustrated and everything. Whereas playing card decks, you know, even the tarot card decks are designed that you can kind of hold them in your hand, and you can tell at a glance what 15 cards maybe in your hand are, which is kind of hard with a Rider-Waite deck, for example. You can get around that. For example, here is some Tarot de Marseille cards which have had the corner pips added, so you can see that that is a Queen of Clubs and a 10 of Diamonds or 10 of Coins at a glance to make it easier. Another option is there is an artist in England called Ian Cumsty who does brilliant work with playing cards, and he actually has a deck called the Rare Triumphs, which is a tarot deck but optimized for gameplay. So it looks like the Tarot de Marseille, but it has the corner pips and everything, and a lot of his original artwork based on a lot of historical tarot decks. So you have, you know, like the court cards sort of look like a lot of, you know, actually a lot of them have English elements as well. And things like the aces kind of look like the Tarot de Marseille with the hand holding the symbols. The trump cards all, again, they sort of look familiar, and most of them are the same order as the ones that people are familiar with. It was interesting when I saw a few people sort of reviewing them online, some tarot card fans, including a lot of card readers as well as card game players. Some of them were kind of confused, so why are the trumps different? Like, that's not the picture that I'm used to from the Rider-Waite. And the reason was he actually did a lot of research with a lot of older Italian historical card decks, like the Minchiate deck and things like that, which we might talk about another time. But this one I can highly recommend. If you want to play with a tarot card game with a deck that looks like tarot cards in the way that you'd imagine them, the Rare Triumphs is a really great option for that. I mean, this joke's pretty famous too. As Stephen Wright said, last night I stayed up late playing poker with tarot cards. I got a full house and 4 people died. And I don't know, I mean, on occasions I've seen someone who's into tarot card reading who didn't like the idea of you playing games with a tarot deck per se, but honestly most people don't seem to mind. I know people who do both, and then I also know people who do cartomancy, divination, using a regular poker deck, and I know, for example, as well, if you look around on YouTube, you can find, particularly a lot of the Italian tarot decks have a history of both being used for card games, but also being used for cartomancy, which is pretty interesting. You can look that up sometime too. But all jokes aside, hopefully some of this seems interesting to you, and if you subscribe to my channel, I'm going to build up a bit of a a bit of a library of explanations of how to play some of these tarot card games. Hopefully I'll be able to hit on all of the major ones that are still played around Europe today, and also some tips on the best places to play them online if you're stuck and you don't have anyone else who wants to play together with you, or if you just want to maybe play with some people who already know how to play, so then you can teach your friends in real life. Hit subscribe, and I will see you next time.